In 1900, when all the Ashanti kings fell silent before the British governor, an old woman stood up. She was 60 years old. She had no army, she had no crown, but she had something that the men had lost: the courage to say no. This is the story of Yaa Asantewaa, the warrior queen that history tried to forget. To understand what happened in 1900, you need to know what the Golden Stool means to the Ashanti people. 200 years earlier, in 1701, a priest named Okomfo called the Ashanti chiefs together. He told them the sky itself would give them a sign of unity. And then, according to the legend, it descended from the heavens, a stool made of pure gold. This was no ordinary stool. The Golden Stool contained the soul of the Ashanti nation. Every ancestor, every warrior, every mother and child, the spirits lived in this sacred object. The priest declared, "No one, not even the king, may ever sit upon it. It must never touch the ground. It is not furniture. It is the very essence of who we are as a people." For 2 centuries, the Ashanti protected this stool with their lives. It was more sacred than any crown, more valuable than all the gold in their kingdom. The British didn't understand this. They thought it was just another piece of treasure to steal. By 1896, the British had been slowly tightening their grip on Ashanti territory for decades. They demanded taxes, they demanded submission, they demanded the impossible. When the young King Prempeh I refused to become their puppet, the British came for him. They didn't just arrest him, they wanted to break his spirit completely. The British governor forced King Prempeh to his knees, made him kiss the boots of his captors in front of his own people, in front of his queens, in front of his elders. It was designed to humiliate not just a man, but an entire nation. Then they took him away. The king, his mother, his father, his closest advisors, over 100 members of his royal family were chained and shipped off to the Seychelles Island, thousands of miles from home. The Ashanti people watched their leaders disappear over the horizon. Many thought they'd never see them again. The British believed that with the kings gone, the Ashanti would finally submit. They were wrong. 4 years later, the new British Governor Frederick Hodgson called a meeting in Kumasi. He summoned all the remaining Ashanti chiefs and elders. The Ashanti king, still grieving their exiled king, still trying to hold their nation together. Governor Hodgson stood before them, dripping with colonial arrogance. He had demands. He wanted more taxes, more land, more submission. And then he said something that changed everything. "Where is the Golden Stool?" he asked. "I am the representative of Her Majesty the Queen of England, the paramount power in this country. I shall not allow the Golden Stool to remain hidden. Bring it to me. I intend to sit upon it." You could hear the gasp throughout the hall. The Golden Stool, the soul of the nation. He wanted to sit on it, like it was just another chair. And then silence. All the chiefs, the warriors, the elders, the men who were supposed to protect their culture, they said nothing. They sat there, heads bowed, defeated. No one stood up, no one protested, no one said a word. The British had broken them, or so it seemed. But there was one person in that hall who was not broken. Her name was Yaa Asantewaa. She was the Queen Mother of Ejisu, a leader, a counselor, a woman respected for her wisdom. She was also 60 years old, and she had had enough. While all the men sat in silence, this elderly woman stood up. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Now I see that some of you fear to go forward to fight for our king. If it were the brave days of old, the days of our ancestors, chiefs would not sit down to see their king taken away without firing a shot. She looked directly at the chiefs, the warriors, the men. No white man would have dared to speak to chiefs of Ashanti in the way the governor spoke to you this morning. It is true that the bravery of Ashanti is no more. I cannot believe it. And then she made a declaration that would also echo through history. If you, the men of Ashanti, will not go forward, then we will. We, the women, will. I shall call upon my fellow women. We will fight. We will fight until the last of us falls in the battlefields. A 60-year-old woman had just shamed every man in the room. And more importantly, she had reminded them who they were supposed to be. Within days, something remarkable happened. The chiefs, embarrassed by a grandmother's courage, began to rally. Warriors gathered, women took up arms alongside men, young and old prepared for war, and leading them all was Yaa Asantewaa. She didn't just inspire the men, she organized the women, trained them, armed them. This had never been done before. Women fighting as warriors in Ashanti tradition, and these were not normal times, and Yaa Asantewaa was not a normal queen. In the war councils, something extraordinary happened. The women who weeks before had sat in defeated silence now took orders from her. A 60-year-old woman was commanding generals and planning military strategy, and she was brilliant at it. The British were about to learn a lesson they would never forget. In April 1900, Yaa Asantewaa led 5,000 warriors to the British fort in Kumasi. They surrounded it completely, trapped the governor, his wife, and hundreds of British soldiers inside. The same governor who had demanded the Golden Stool was now prisoner in his own fortress. Yaa Asantewaa didn't command from the rear. At 60 years old, she fought on the front lines. She led charges. She rallied troops. She refused to show fear even when British bullets flew past her head. The British soldiers inside the fort couldn't believe it. They were being defeated by an army led by a grandmother. Inside the fort, panic set in. Governor Hodgson sent desperate messages to the coast, begging for reinforcements. Food ran out, water ran low, disease spread. The man who had demanded to sit on the Golden Stool was now rationing moldy biscuits and hoping he'd survive long enough to be rescued. The siege lasted for months: April, May, June, July. Every day, the Ashanti tightened their grip. Every day, the British grew weaker. Yaa Asantewaa had achieved what seemed impossible. She had brought the British Empire to its knees. But empires don't fall easily. In September, the British sent 1,400 heavily armed troops from the coast. They came with canoes, Maxim machine guns, artillery. The Ashanti warriors fought with traditional weapons, with courage, with determination, but they were outgunned. The final battles were devastating. The British used overwhelming firepower to break the siege. Ashanti warriors fell by the hundreds. Villages were burned. The land was scorched, but still they fought. In late September, Yaa Asantewaa was finally captured. But even in chains, she refused to bow. Her head stayed high, her eyes stayed fierce. The British soldiers who arrested her would later write about her, how this elderly woman showed no fear, no regret, no defiance. She had lost the battle, but she had not lost her spirit. The British exiled her to the Seychelles, just as they had done to King Prempeh. At 60 years old, Yaa Asantewaa was torn from her homeland, chained like a criminal, and shipped across the ocean. She would spend the next 21 years on those islands. 21 years staring across the waters towards a home she would never see again. But even in exile, she never surrendered. Visitors who met her said she still carried herself like the warrior queen she was. In 1921, at the age of 81, Yaa Asantewaa died, far from home, far from her people. The British thought they had won. They thought her story would be forgotten. They were so wrong about that too. In British history books, they call it the Ashanti Uprising of 1900, a minor rebellion, quickly suppressed, barely worth mentioning. They wrote Yaa Asantewaa out of the story almost completely. After all, how could they admit that a 60-year-old African woman had nearly defeated them? But here is what they couldn't write out of history. The British never found the Golden Stool. Despite years of searching, despite threats and bribes and torture, the Ashanti hid it, protected it, refused to give up their soul. Yaa Asantewaa's war had saved what mattered most. Today in Ghana, Yaa Asantewaa is a national hero. Schools are named after her. Statues honor her. Children learn her story. She is remembered not as a woman who lost a war, but as the queen who refused to surrender her people's dignity. Every year, Ashanti women gather to honor Yaa Asantewaa. They wear traditional clothes. They sing the song of the war. They teach their daughters about the grandmother who shamed kings. Because the story isn't just about the past, it is a reminder that courage doesn't come from age or gender or having an army behind you. The Golden Stool still exists. It's displayed in ceremonies, honored and protected. And to this day, over a century later, no one sits on it. Governor Hodgson wanted to use it as a furniture. Yaa Asantewaa made sure that the soul of her nation stayed sacred. In 1900, when all the kings fell silent, an old woman stood up. She led a war. She shook an empire. She saved her people's soul. And though she died in exile, she won something far greater than any battle. She proved that one person's courage can inspire a nation. Her name was Yaa Asantewaa. And now you know her story.